Capital News tonight. IGP Simon Siro meets with commanders of the police force from Lake Zone regions. And government resolves land disputes between TPDF Kaboya camp and residents in Muleba. And in sports, TFF warns Younga's new coach Luc Emel for his claims of racism during the match against Azam. Good evening, this is Capital News at 9:30. My name is Vanessa Victor. Let's get things started with the national news. The Inspector General of Police, IGP Simon Siro, has met with police commanders of 5 Lake Zone regions in order to come up with a strategic plan which will address the problem of frequent killings. Addressing residents in Shinyanga region, IGP Simon Siro urged them to collaborate with the police force in revealing criminals involved with the murder incidents.
Leo hapa Shinyanga ni kwa ajili ya kukutanisha makamanda wa mikoa ya Simiyu, Mwanza, Geita, Kagera na Shinyanga.
Today we are meeting with commanders from Simiyu, Mwanza, Geita, Kagera and Shinyanga regions, with our main agenda being killings that are associated with witchcrafts. In these respective regions, these kinds of killings have become a norm. It is high time now that we put an end to such incidences, because I believe that there is a group of people who have specialized in killing these people, and there are people who does fake fortune telling, and there are people who seek witch doctors whenever they have sick patients. We are here to come up with strategies of combating the killings, and in 1 month the results will be obvious.
Lakini lazima kuna watu ambao kazi yao ni kwa ajili ya kupiga ramli chunganishi.
The government has resolved a long-standing land dispute between officers of Tanzania People's Defense Force TPDF from Kaboya camp and residents who are alleged to have invaded the area in Muleba district, Kagera region, and started farming activities as well as set up settlements.
Most people have cooperated with us and they are ready to be moved. What is left is evaluation exercise that will allow us to have clear picture towards how much is needed for compensations, as well as we will work with the council to set proper infrastructures to the area that these people will be moved to. Honorable Minister, these 3 plots of almost 1,337 hectares were previously used by land encroachers. However, if their demand will be granted, then these areas will be good for them to settle. We are glad that the minister handled this matter well. This has been a long conflict where residents did not know their fate. That is why it was difficult to cultivate certain kinds of crops.
And the Minister of State in the Vice President's Office for Union Affairs and Environment, George Simbachawene, has suspended the launch of Msalato Abattoir in Dodoma after expressing dissatisfaction on the unclean environment and below standard construction of the buildings. He has given Dodoma City Council 1 week to ensure construction of the abattoir is completed according to the required standards.
All I see is pure dirt, poor finishes, and the tanks are empty. I give you only 1 week to complete this building. Then I will officially open the abattoir. I think it is important for them to also pay attention towards how many people are suffering following the close down of the abattoir, so that the leaders responsible should supervise the building exercise effectively. People need to go back to work. Unfortunately, the exercise has failed due to irregularities that the Honorable Minister witnessed. Personally, I am in pain, but all in all we will work on directives given.
The Prevention and Combating of Corruption Bureau, PCCB, has reiterated that 124 billion shillings embezzled from 4,413 cooperatives must be returned. PCCB says that out of the amount, 4 billion has been returned to members of the cooperatives.
Fedha hizo baadhi zimesharejeshwa kwa wakulima wa vyama vya ushirika.
Some of the money has been returned to Agricultural Marketing Cooperative Society AMCOS groups, and others are in special banks that were recommended by Cooperative Societies Register, regional commissioners and district commissioners, with the aim of returning the money back to the AMCOS groups or directly to farmers. I would like to commend the government, which is led by the Chief Operator of Anti-Corruption in the country, Honorable President Dr. John Magufuli, for supporting PCCB financially while running this operation. The investigations are still ongoing for people who stole the money in order to collect enough evidence so that they could be taken to court.
Kuendesha hivi vyama vya ushirika, basi hatua za kisheria zitachukua mkondo wake.
While residents of Tanzania mainland face various challenges in registering for national IDs and others in getting their national ID numbers at the National Identification Authority offices, the situation is very different in Zanzibar, where NIDA offices have been found empty with the staff waiting to provide registration services.
A large number of applicants have been registered and cards are ready for some, as you can see from the boxes. The issue here is people are not bothered to make a follow-up on their cards because numbers and ID cards are ready. This causes some to register twice, which brings in a lot of problems because the second time round the fingerprint will be rejected. This is not just for mobile phone number registration. Every citizen must have one. Usually I don't take such matters lightly. It's just that I was away, and when I came back I found out they were out, so I came to collect mine.
Haki Elimu Tanzania organization has released a report on why some regions and districts in the country perform well and others poorly in the Standard 7 national examinations. The managing director of Haki Elimu, John Kalage, said the report found that lack of parent and guardian involvement on the education performance of children contributed to bad exam results.
Ziko sababu za jumla na sababu mahususi ambazo zilionekana kuchangia.
There are specific and general reasons which contributed to some regions to do well for about 5 consecutive years, and they are as follows. Firstly is better management in school and district levels. Secondly is application of extra teaching methods in district and regional levels. Thirdly is adequate staff and incentives, such as teacher-to-student ratio, which has a direct impact on performance.
Management katika ngazi ya shule na wilaya.
That's all for national news. International news is next. And in international news, Rwanda has removed the visa for entering the country to citizens from Commonwealth, French-speaking and East African Community member countries. The announcement to remove the visa was made by President Paul Kagame of Rwanda during the Africa-UK Summit in London.
Well, as I pointed to the ease of doing business, first of all, we have...
As I have pointed out on the ease of doing business, firstly, we place ourselves in the position of investors and entrepreneurs to see what they would need if they come to invest in our country. Firstly, they need rule of law. good governance that combats corruption and prevents loss of funds.
And that's why being ranked 29 in the world or second in Africa in the index of ease of doing business.
The Minister of Planning in Uganda, David Bahati, has tabled the government's proposed budget estimates of 39.6 trillion shillings for the 2020-2021 financial year, which show a decrease of 900 billion shillings compared to the previous budget.
36.1%. This is...
To date, our debts have reached 36%. There is no country with no debts, and as we borrow, we make sure we remain sustainable.
And the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda have agreed to construct a road between the two countries for security purposes, particularly in Goma and Gisenyi.
Normally, this area is not supposed to be a forest, but rather needs to be open for border protection. And thus we will place roads to move water from the DRC to Rwanda, as this project is important to all people. If we are placing roads, it will help with the safety of our borders in Goma and Gisenyi on the side of Rwanda, and will help reduce robberies.
Pour diminuer la criminalité entre les deux villes sœurs et les deux provinces sœurs.
75 years ago this week, the Soviet army was on the verge of liberating the Auschwitz death camp. The Nazis murdered more than 1 million people there during the Holocaust, almost all of them Jews. It was just one of the many such camps in Nazi-occupied Europe, but Auschwitz stands out as a symbol of the systematic slaughter of Jews and other groups. Today, how the Holocaust is remembered is as much an issue of politics as it is history. And to walk us through a week of difficult commemoration is William Glucroft in Berlin, our political correspondent from our Deutsche Welle partner. So, William, first off, what can we expect to see over the next few days?
Well, a very somber week and a very somber series of events, and quite a whirlwind of events happening in multiple countries involving dozens of world leaders. The first beginning in earnest tomorrow in Israel, in Jerusalem. The Israeli Prime Minister and President are hosting several dozen world leaders, heads of state, at Yad Vashem being Israel's central Holocaust Memorial and Museum and Research Center, for a conference on anti-Semitism. This is an annual conference that's been happening the last few years, but takes particular presence this year, being both the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, and in a time of rising anti-Semitism, which I may note is not only a threat to Jews around the world, but to many other groups, because anti-Semites and people who have violent intentions towards Jews tend to also react violently to Muslims and to people of color and other groups. So this is definitely a problem that extends far beyond the Jewish community, and that is what world leaders in Israel are going to be focusing on tomorrow. And then from there, many of those leaders, including Germany's President Frank-Walter Steinmeier and Israel's President, will fly together to Poland for the weekend and on Monday, which is the day itself of International Holocaust Remembrance. And there will be a commemoration at the death camp itself, where these world leaders and many Holocaust survivors will gather to remember both those who died, as you noted at the top, more than 1 million people who were slaughtered at this death camp, part of the 6 million Jews and 5 million other people who the Nazis killed between 1939 and 1945, and also to remember and reflect all the years since and the lessons for today about nationalism, about racism, and about hate towards many groups. And then from there, world leaders will then fly on back here, Berlin, the German capital, where there'll be more commemorations taking place at the German Bundestag, the parliament, next week.
So how is the current political situation complicating matters?
It's very important to remember that World War II and the end of it really set the table for world affairs today, that many of the countries involved or most affected by the Holocaust really came out and really shaped their identity by what happened then, and that still affects us today. Relations between countries such as Poland and Russia, the United States, the European Union, the establishment of Israel, for example. This is all an effect, a knock-on effect of World War II and the Holocaust. So we see just, for example, in Israel, this anti-Semitism conference, the Polish president was invited, but was not being given a chance to speak like Russia's President Vladimir Putin has been given a chance to speak. That incensed Poland, and Poland pulled out and will not be represented at this anti-Semitism conference in Israel. Already in the weeks and months leading up to this week of events, you saw a lot of diplomatic tensions between, for example, Poland and Russia, both countries trying to set the narrative that they want to show for history, and who was on which side, who was responsible for the Holocaust, and who was the victim, who were the heroes and who were the perpetrators. All sides, whether it's the United States, whether it's Poland, whether it's Russia, they want to show that they helped and they didn't hurt. When, of course, the truth is there's a little bit of culpability to go around for all parties, whether it's the United States and other Western powers that didn't do enough to confront Hitler and the Nazis in the early years, whether it was Poland and many Poles who collaborated with the Nazis during the occupation of that country in World War II, or whether it was the Soviet Union, now Russia, that colluded with Germany, Nazi Germany, in dividing up and invading Poland. So a lot of blame to go around for what happened 75 years ago, and a little bit of victimization to go around as well for everybody. And these kinds of questions and this kind of remembering is not only a question for historians, but we see playing out between diplomats and world leaders today.
So very quickly, why is this anniversary especially significant?
It's the 75th anniversary, and any anniversary that tends to end in 5 and zeros are big ones. The 70th, the 75th, and in 5 years, the 80th. We're looking at an incredibly dwindling number of Holocaust survivors, people who still remember, who were actually there to tell us their horrible stories. Just maybe a few 100,000 survivors left in the world. That may sound like a big number, but when you think that many of those still left alive were just children at the time, so their memories may be very limited, they're also getting very old, so what they remember may be limited based on that as well. Many of them are too sick to travel. Many of them find it difficult to still speak and engage with audiences. And all of this remembrance of the Holocaust, it's based on their testimony, it's based on their presence, it's based on people being able to reach out and interact with these kinds of people. And once they're all gone, and many of them already are, the question remains, what becomes of remembrance of the Holocaust? What becomes of the history we tell of that day? And what becomes of the lessons that we learn and that we have to keep with us in an era where nationalism is reemerging, populism is reemerging, is anti-Semitism and hate for other kinds of groups we see reemerging in countries all around the world. And that's the challenge we're faced with today, looking at the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz.
Yes, and especially since it had so many far-reaching consequences. Well, thank you, William, for that insight, and until next time. And that special report ends our international news. We'll be back with business news after this break.
Watch Business Edition as we talk to business leaders and experts in sectors that are transforming Tanzania's economy.
We believe that the driver is the customer.
To change the mindset of traditional HR to the digitalization.
Make sure that everybody can get some access to financial services.
And once we understand the vision of our leaders, we then need to be behind them and help them in achieving that vision.
Business have involved mercantile operations, trade guilds, or shared agricultural production, infrastructure, construction, financial sectors, tourism, and mining. Business Edition on Friday at 8:15 p.m.
Welcome back, and in business news. The police force in Tandahimba district, Mtwara region, in collaboration with officers from Tanzania Cashew Nut Board, CBT, have been directed to implement a house-to-house search operation on cashew nut farmers who have failed to repay input debts amounting to 1.4 billion shillings.
We spoke to our government and they listened to us, and today people are doing this. No, it is unacceptable. Firstly, I direct my fellow farmers. Anyone who has taken a loan on inputs from CBT should pay, and if they do not pay, I direct the Cashew Nut Board to go house to house to each farmer who took loans and did not pay and force them. They should be captured and arrested.
Mkopo ulikuwa una jumla ya bilioni 1 na milioni 400.
The loan totaled to 1,450 million shillings, but to date only 507 billion has been returned, which is only 34%. We, as the Cashew Nut Board, have with the ongoing auctions seen from the first to the most recent one, which is the 12th, that the percentage of returns from individual units, farmers and district as a whole are low.
And the government has said that 80% of cotton bought from farmers has found reliable foreign markets, and that in the next season farmers will be paid through the banking system. This was said in Dodoma by the Deputy Minister of Agriculture, Hussein Bashe.
Lakini vile vile tuna changamoto.
We also have challenges as buyers. We owe APCOS and seized money from the districts, as the priority was to pay farmers, but APCOS has used farmers' payments to pay for operational activities. Directives were given when the cotton season started that all cotton be bought and for the banks to finance the private sector so that they can do so.
So msimu wa pamba umeanza kwamba pamba yote inunuliwe na banks ziweze kufinance sekta binafsi.
Tanzania Bureau of Standards TBS has emphasized that it will confiscate vehicles and arrest people who smuggle goods into the country, as well as those who sell fake goods to consumers.
According to the laws that govern us, our products must have their standards up to par so that they are accepted by consumers within and outside the country. It is our responsibility to implement this and ensure we provide the quality of goods as the money given by our customers.
Kwa kanda ya ziwa tunapakana na karibu nchi 4.
The lake zone borders almost 4 countries, and all of them need good quality products. It is a big market whose biggest impediment for us to reach was the quality of standard.
And that is the end of business news. Sports is up next.
Away first time, good start from Bolt. Bolt leading a moment and going away. Gay trying to go with him, and he's going to be dragged through the second place, but he's going to win it by 2 meters. Away first time, good start from Bolt. Bolt leading a moment and going away. Gay trying to go with him, and he's going to be dragged through the second place, but he's going to win it by 2 meters. Opposition, Joaquinho, he did lose to Lynn.
And in sports, Tanzania Football Federation TFF has warned the new Yanga coach Luke Emel for his claims of racism during the match against Azam, with players Mrisho Ngasa and Ramadan Kabwili and Cleophas Sospita fined and banned for 3 matches.
Yanga amepewa onyo kwa kufanya vitendo na kutoa matamshi yasiyofaa.
Young African Sports Club coach has been given a warning against acting in a manner not acceptable, and the club has been instructed to speak to its coach so he does not repeat this. He spoke about discrimination, and as you know very well, that our country does not support it.
Haina ubaguzi wa aina yoyote.
The national table tennis team has begun preparations for the Open Championships prepared by Tanzania Table Tennis Association, TTTA, which are expected to begin from January 24th to 26th this year in the country and will involve Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Zambia and Malawi.
Haya ni mashindano ya wazi yameandaliwa na TTTA, chama cha mpira wa meza Tanzania.
This is an open championship by TTA. At least 4 countries will take place in East Africa: Kenya, Uganda, Zambia, and of course the host Tanzania. Insatiably, we are well prepared and ready to win.
Katika kalenda zetu ya kila mwaka tunafanya kwa mwaka wa 5 mfululizo sasa.
Chelsea manager Frank Lampard repeated his wish to bring in a new striker after Tammy Abraham limped off with an ankle injury against Arsenal. And Serena Williams has expressed frustration by her own form as she overcame Slovenian Tamara Zidansek with a patchy performance to reach the 3rd round. And that sports item ends our news bulletin. On behalf of everyone who worked to bring you this bulletin, I am Vanessa Victor. Thank you for watching and good night.